hunger and its effects on education, like specifically in Kenya. So, all right, first we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition. And we've already learned this, but let's just do a little refresher because I'm going to be asking y'all questions throughout my presentation. So this is your benefit to learn. So a calorie is a unit that measures energy content of food and beverages. You can mainly get calories from fats, proteins, carbohydrates, and sugars. Carbs and proteins both have 116 calories per ounce. Fats have 249 calories per ounce, and sugars only have 68 calories per ounce. So what does your body use calories for? Energy, that's right. So we use calories to perform day-to-day operations and just really anything in general, from your heartbeat to your lungs to thinking, anything. So even y'all are just sitting right now and I'm standing here, we're all burning calories. When you're chewing, you're burning calories, so you're putting calories in your body, but you're also exerting calories. And even when you're sleeping, you're still burning calories. So now we're going to transition to the primary schooling age for calories. So if you're 6 through 12, you're going to need about 1,600 to 220 calories per day just to function, depending on how active you are and just your body type, basically. If you're more active, obviously you're going to need more calories. What happens if you aren't getting enough calories?
You don't have energy.
You don't have energy. Perfect. So what happens is that your body uses the calories that you have just to kind of focus on the essential things. So like your heartbeat and your respiratory system mainly. So why are Kenyans hungry? I don't know if your parents did this, but mine were always like, if I throw away food, they'd be like, the kids in Africa are starving. And they kind of make you feel bad about throwing the food away, but that's not actually why that they're hungry. So next time that your parents say that to you, you can be like, hey mom, actually it's because of the unpredictable weather patterns that are in Kenya. And because Kenya only has 2 wet seasons and 2 dry seasons per year. The wet seasons being March, April, May is the heavy wet season. And then the lighter rains are in October, November, and December. An example of this creating a little problem would be in 2016 when the lighter rains in October, November, and December did not come. So what happened with that was obviously the farmers are more dependent on the heavier rains, but the lighter rains still help for their harvest. So, okay, they were like, all right, we can slide by with this. But in 2017, and then March, April, May, the rain still didn't come. So then what happened? Basically, a whole drought occurred. Obviously, some crops can still be produced because of irrigation system that the country already had, and just like rivers and stuff, but all the rivers dried up, and basically the whole country was at a standstill. So, and then if your dad says, hey, don't throw your food away, you'd be like, actually, as well as droughts and unpredictable weather patterns, government corruption is also a reason why Kenyans are hungry. Because in this drought of 2017, the government did not suspend their exports because they wanted to make money on their taxes. So they still sent all their food, or like the same amount of food that they usually send to other countries, even though their own citizens did not have enough food to support themselves. Even their neighboring countries such as Uganda and Tanzania stopped their exports in order for their citizens to eat before they were to make money off of taxes. So overall, it's just Kenya's government is corrupt and the weather patterns are not reliable enough in order for the farmers to make a productive harvest every year. So how does this all affect education? So I know for a fact that Sam, every single day, brings, or almost every day to class, brings a granola bar. Connor, the other day, left 5 minutes early to go to lunch because he was hungry. And then Noah one time brought in a fistful of chicken. Would anybody like to explain why y'all did that?
I was hungry.
You were hungry?
Yeah.
This was like 2 months ago.
I know. Why did you leave early, though?
Because I needed food so I could function.
Sam, why do you always bring granola bars?
Because you can't think when you're hungry.
That's right. So we have the luxuries that we can bring fistfuls of chicken to class if we're hungry. But that's not the case for everybody. I know around the United States, public schools have free and reduced breakfast and lunches. But in Kenya, it's almost the same program, except it's just free lunches. And so the kids have to rely on their parents and their families for breakfast and dinner, which is okay unless there's a drought, which happens a lot. So if you're hungry, what are your side effects? It could be anybody.
I'm really distracted.
Do you get distracted?
You're distracted all the time.
Headaches? Anybody Anybody else?
I get mean.
You get mean? Do you have like little outbursts?
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe?
Don't talk to me when I'm hungry.
Don't talk to you when you're hungry? Okay. Well, yeah, so hunger can affect like you can become dizzy, nauseous, your memory is not going to be as effective, your concentration is lacking, and in primary school aging, if you're not eating enough calories, then you're going to have long-term learning disabilities because at the primary schooling age is when your brain is developing the most rapid. Your brain isn't done developing until you're 25, but that is when it's developing the most rapid. So why I asked Kessa if she ever has little outbreaks, because hunger also can spiral into other things such as depression, anxiety, which creates outbreaks, which ultimately negatively puts an effect on the learning environment. So if Kessa has an outbreak, then Dr. Savage would have to like take her attention away from the whole class and be like, okay, like Kessa, like you need to calm down, like go get some water, like whatever. And so that creates a negative learning environment because everybody else is affected because Kessa's hungry. So that's the same thing that's happening in Kenya. Kids are really hungry, and teachers, instead of being able to teach their lessons, are having to go and tend to the child's needs. They can't sit still and listen because they're so hungry, or they're sitting there falling asleep, which also isn't good. So another problem with not eating is that your immune system is not going to be strong enough to fight off sicknesses. So if your immune system isn't strong enough to fight off sicknesses, then you're going to get sick. And because you're already not getting the proper amount of calories, you're definitely not going to recover as quickly as you could if you had the proper amount of calories. Like, you know when we all get the stomach flu, and like as much as we don't want to eat, we have to because we know it's going to get our strength back up so we can just return to life? Well, that's the same thing. They don't really have that option. So if they're like getting rid of calories, then they're not getting any back in, then that's just not going to work. So just a little bit of statistics. 16% of children under the age of 5 in Kenya are underweight, and you're like, okay, like that's not a lot, like 16%, like whatever, but in the United States it's only 0.5%. And then 35% of kids are growth stunted, while in the United States it's only 2.1%. So obviously there's a real disconnect between hunger and like growth. So like you might be asking, well, what are foreign countries doing to help? Foreign countries are helping, but the problem is that they are providing, like they're helping the schools provide the lunch meal plans. And so they are giving the kids lunch, the sustainable amount of calories for lunch that has been approved by like nutritionists and like organizations that know like how many sugars, proteins, fats, carbs need to be in this lunch. The problem is the kids aren't eating the lunch because they're taking it home and sharing it with the rest of their family. This is called leakage. So the kids are all, they're bringing their food back, giving it to their siblings, to their parents, and that's just how they choose to do it. So a story that I'm going to talk about really quick is something that happened in the drought of 2017 in Laikipia County in Kenya. So basically what happened was 300,037,292 children were acutely malnourished, while 75,300 children were very malnourished, and this was because of the drought. But what happened was the whole country came to a standstill. Mothers stopped sending their kids to school because the schools stopped providing lunch. And for the parents, that's the main reason why they send their kids to school, is to get lunch. Not to get an education, but just to get lunch. Because usually kids in Kenya only stay through primary schooling and then end up dropping out before secondary schooling because they are able to get jobs with the education they've already got just from the primary schooling, because they want to be able to support their families from a young age. The problem with this is that if they don't continue to stay in school, then they're not going to have an opportunity to learn more, to get a higher paying job, to then support their family. So one mother commented that she stopped sending her kids to school and just started sending them to little jobs around the village so that they could eat lunch for free. And then when they got home, she felt bad, but they had to go to bed hungry, but there's nothing she could do about it. And the kids knew that. So in conclusion, we can learn from this story that Kenya is really struggling to feed their citizens, which heavily affects the education system, especially the young kids in their brain development. So Kenya's droughts and poor government decision making still has Kenya at a standstill, which is why schools are continuing to be closed and people are still hungry around Kenya.